Welcome back, guys, to another edition of Rambling with Rhino, NFL and college football edition. Here we go. Tonight is, I guess, the second kickoff of college football. There was 5 games last week. Nothing really notable. Wyoming and Hawaii. But tonight, nothing real notable tonight either. The air quotes national champion Central Florida Knights play UConn, I believe, and Texas A&M plays, and there's several bigger schools play, but they don't play anybody. A bunch of directional schools and D2 schools, pretty much. So anyway, it is football. Also, like 15 or 16 preseason games. I guess this is the last tryout for the guys that don't want to work at Enterprise Rental for the rest of their lives. So anyway, let's get into a couple football topics. I guess the biggest one is, for me anyway, is Teddy Bridgewater being traded from the Jets to the Saints for a 3rd-round pick. It's something I'll never understand. I don't know what the equity is on the 3rd-round pick. Don't get me wrong, I know guys like Bill Belichick have found, Tom Brady in the 6th round and Teddy Bruschi's and the Mike Vrabels and diamonds in the rough, and I get that. I get that some of these guys can find a player in the 3rd, 4th, 6th round, free agency. I get all that. But if Teddy Bridgewater is worthy enough to be a starter, and if you hadn't put all your eggs in Sam Darnold's basket as your 1st overall pick, Teddy Bridgewater would be your starter. So he's a starting quarterback in the NFL, which there aren't a plethora of, especially backups. I don't see where a 3rd-round pick, because that's a crapshoot. A 1st overall pick's a crapshoot. We've seen enough Jamarcus Russells and Ryan Leafs and, Vince Youngs and guys like that hadn't panned out. So what is the 75th pick of the draft? You just don't know. I just don't think it's worthy of the gamble. I'd rather have Teddy Bridgewater on my bench if Sam Darnold struggles. He throws a lot of interceptions in college. He's definitely going to throw some interceptions in the league, and then, say breaks a finger on a helmet or strains a hamstring or whatever the case may be. Injury comes up and you're without a quarterback and you don't have a backup. Your season's over pretty much. So I really don't understand that. I wish somebody could explain the equity of a 3rd-round pick to me, because I'll never understand a 3rd or 4th-round pick for a starter. The Patriots, and I guess that was a Tom Brady, Bob Kraft thing, would get rid of Jimmy Garoppolo for whatever reason. But for a 4th-round pick, and 6 months later, the guy gets a $100 million contract. So he was worthy of being a starter and possibly a top 15 starter in the league, but all you got for him was a 4th-round pick. And this kind of scratches my head. But anyway, maybe somebody at some point can give me the equity of what each round's worth as far as draft status. Secondly, big contracts been coming up. Odell Beckham signs for like $90 million, 60 of it guaranteed. Aaron Rodgers, $100+ million, I think $100 million guaranteed, or all of it guaranteed, and this is some unprecedented territory here. And a lot of people are saying, well, Aaron Rodgers is underpaid, even at $100 million, and maybe I could see that, but there's 2 ways to look at this thing. And number one, yeah, he probably is. He's the best player in that franchise, since Brett Favre left, and they have won a Super Bowl. But what does that mean now for the rest of his career? You can't afford to pay anybody else. You're strapped financially. You lost Jordy Nelson. You never had a good running back, really. The defense has been average at best. So who can you afford to pay now to improve the roster? I don't blame Aaron Rodgers. What people don't understand is this is your career, and it's a short career. It's not like us who can work till we're 65 and then get Social Security. once you retire from football, unless you go into broadcasting or something, you don't have any more football-related income. So I don't blame him there, but it just seems like you put yourself in a bad situation. But on the other side, I mean, you got to keep him. You definitely got to have Aaron Rodgers. You don't want a Bubby Brister or Doug Peterson leading your team. So I don't know. I think it's similar to, there's so much money in football now. I think it's similar to like a bank or a church. You see banks building new banks all the time, and people ask why. Because they make so much money and they can't keep it. You got to spend it somewhere. NFL, you make so much money, millions and billions of dollars, that you got to spend it somewhere. And if that's keeping your best player, no matter what the cost, then that's what you do. And at the end of the day, winning championships is what makes you money. Is ticket sales and jersey sales, and then beer and hot dog sales at the game. So I think the Green Bay Packers did what they needed to do. The Giants, I'm not sure about. I mean, you don't want to lose Odell Beckham, potentially the best or top 3 wide receiver in the game, but you have a aging Eli Manning and a aging team around him. I don't know what that'll mean in the next 2 or 3 years for Odell Beckham if you don't have somebody who can throw the football to him. So interesting in that respect that you got probably 30% of your 53-man roster tied up in one guy. It seems like that could be a problem at the end of the day, but I don't know. Another topic that came up is Jim Harbaugh. I guess Jim Harbaugh's legacy as a coach. I've seen a lot of people comparing him to Nick Saban and saying he could have a better resume. And you can make an argument that he does have a pretty solid resume, as a player, and then coming in and coaching, and then going to Stanford and doing a fine job, and going to the San Francisco 49ers and going to a Super Bowl. And, then coming to Michigan, and I guess big schools like Michigan and I guess now Alabama and Notre Dame and Florida's, 10 wins is the minimum. And he hasn't really been consistent in that. Really good defense and had a lot of good players, but really hadn't went to the next level. And I guess until he goes to a BCS Bowl or until he wins, the Big Ten, which is tough with Ohio State in there. And then you got Michigan State and, of course, Wisconsin every year. Those teams are formidable. So I think Jim Harbaugh's legacy, I think he brings it on himself with a bit of his arrogance maybe, and people don't like that part, but you can't deny that he's been successful everywhere he's went. Is he good as Nick Saban? I don't know. Saban wins a championship at LSU, then comes and wins a handful at Alabama. The Miami Dolphins experiment did backfire, but I mean, look at that roster before and since he's been gone. These are the type of guys who would spend $10 million on Jay Cutler. So, I mean, he really didn't have anything to work with. He wanted Drew Brees. Instead, he got Dante Culpepper, and the rest is history. So, I don't really understand these comparisons. Everybody always compares everybody to the best. Nobody's Michael Jordan, but you don't have to be. It's pretty good if you're the second best or third best. Everybody's not Joe Montana, but being John Elway's pretty cool. That's my biggest argument with that. Jim Harbaugh's done a fine job. 8 or 9 wins isn't what Michigan hired him to do. But then again, this is college football, man. Every week's different. And there's very few coaches who consistently win 10 games a year. Outside of Saban and Mark Richt and I guess Dabo Swinney and Urban Meyer, you don't see guys that average 10-plus wins a season. It's tough. It's a cutthroat business, and we'll see what Harbaugh does this year. Big kickoff game Saturday versus Notre Dame. They can get that win. That'll put them in the right position. But anyway, somebody please explain to me draft equity. We're gonna see more and more of these $100 million contracts. Just the way it goes. And if Jim Harbaugh wins Saturday, I think he'll be on his way to his first big-time season if they can get past Ohio State. Thanks for listening. I'll be back later on, guys. Appreciate it.